Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi
Waalaikumsalam
wabarakatuh.
warahmatullahi
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning from Indonesia, and I believe this is already afternoon. Good afternoon
Yes.
for
Good
Australian side,
2 p.m.
Dr. Zohir Gapsi. Okay. Welcome to today's International Scholar Engagement Program presented by the Faculty of Humanities. Our talk today, our virtual talk today is entitled Language Spoken and Unspoken and Discourse Analysis, Manufacturing Consent in Political and Religious Narratives. We are very privileged today to have Associate Professor Dr. Zohir Gapsi, a leading expert in Arabic and Islamic studies, as our key speaker today. I would like to, first of all, invite the Dean of the Faculty of Humanities to give a welcoming remark with regard to this virtual international scholar engagement program. For the Dean, Dr. Faisal, time is yours, Ustaz.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah Sayyidina Muhammad ibn Abdillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa mawala amma ba'd. Maybe Dr. Zuhair anak sa'atakalam bil lugha al-arabiyyah. Ana doktor alimun bil arabiyyah wal injiliziyah. Wa rubbama ana qalil fil lugha al-injiliziyah. أولا the first مرحبا بكم في هذه المؤتمر الدولي معنا مع كلية العلوم الإنسانية من جامعة مولانا ملك إبراهيم الإسلامية الحقوقية بمالان. مالان تقع في جاوا شرقية في جزيرة جاوا جزء من جزر في إندونيسيا. أنا أفكر أن هذا المؤتمر مهم جدا لا سيما نحن هذا اليوم نأخذ الموضوع عن اللغة spoken or non spoken. إذ اللغة ليست مجرد أداة للتعبير بل هي طاقة فعالة توجه الفكرة وتؤثر في السلوك وكذلك اللغة تشكل الوعي الجمعي للأفراد والمجتمع. لذلك ومن خلال اللغة تبني السرديات السياسية والدينية وتصاغ المواقف ويدار الرأي العام. لذلك فإن دراسة اللغة منطوقة كانت أو غير منطوقة وتحليل الخطاب في هذا السياق تفتح لنا آفاقا واسعة للفهم كيف تصنع المفاهيم وتدار القوة في المجتمعات الحديثة. إذن لقد بات من الضروري اليوم أن نقرأ الخطابات السياسية والدينية بعين ناقدة تعتمد على أدوات تحليل الخطاب للكشف عن آليات الإقناع والتوجيه وبناء الرضا الجماعي سواء من خلال الكلمات المنطوقة أو الإشارات غير اللفظية التي تحمل معاني عميقة تتجاوز حدود اللغة الظاهرة. ومن هنا أظن تأتي أهمية هذا اللقاء العلمي إذ يجمع بين الباحثين من مختلف البلدان والتخصصات وخاصة طالبات وطالباتنا من كلية العلوم الإنسانية من قسم الأدب الإنجليزي خاصة معنا أمامنا مع الدكتور الزهير كبشي من جامعة ديكن أستراليا. إذن in my conclusion, I would like to express my gratitude to the organizing committee and to all participants for their valuable contribution and presence. Thank you, Dr. Kapsi, Dr. Zuhair Kapsi, and I wish all participants and productive and inspiring discussion.
Inshallah.
Thank you, the Dean of the. You are still muted, Pak Faisal, please unmute if you still need to say some words.
Okay, وفي الختام أنا أشكر وخاصة للدكتور زهير كبشي من جامعة ديكن أو من ديكن University Australia على حضوركم
شكرا.
for your participation and contribution and present this seminar. Thank you, and I wish all participants a productive and inspiring discussion. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much. Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Al-Kulaima, or the remark from the Dean of the Faculty of Humanities. Before proceeding further, I would like to remind and invite to all participants to stay on cam so that this discussion, even conducted virtually, will become more lively and also will become more interactive. So please, you are duly requested to stay on cam throughout the program, and please silence any devices that might interrupt the program. Okay, I would like to first of all introduce the really long and outstanding CV from Dr. Zohir Gapsi as our speaker today. Dr. Gapsi is a senior lecturer in Arabic and Islamic Studies at Deakin University, and now he serves as the course director for languages. He is recognized as a leading researcher in his field. It's proven by having been named as Australia's field leader researcher by the Australian Research Magazine in 2024. His academic journey includes his PhD in linguistics, obtained from the University of Western Sydney, and his master's in applied linguistics was also obtained from the University of New South Wales. Dr. Gapsi has a very quite long teaching experience spanning over 2 decades, having lectured at several universities in Australia. He has a quite extensive publication record with recent works examining issues such as Islamophobia, language and identity in Tunisia, and the socio-political impact of media discourse. His most recent research includes work on Tunisian youth identity post-Arab Spring, the political rhetoric surrounding Islamophobia, and the complexities of Arabic and Islamic discourse. We are truly fortunate today to have Dr. Gapsi with us to share his knowledge and insights on such a critical and timely subject. Without further ado, let us now begin the talk for Dr. Zohir Gapsi. The floor and the screen is fully yours.
Okay, thank you very much. I will share my PowerPoint if it's okay.
Yeah, please.
It's okay, yeah. Okay. Let's stop share for a minute. A second. Okay, can you see it? Okay, I'll start the,
yes, we can see it, yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'll start with the first one. All right, okay, right. So can you see this? Okay, wonderful. Okay, so thank you very much. So do you see the PowerPoint? Yeah? Okay. Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Yeah. Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you, Dr. Faisal. That was a very nice introduction, and Dr. Zainur as well. I'm really happy to be here. It's an honor actually to be with you, especially with so many sharp and curious minds today. So in Melbourne at the moment is afternoon, so good morning to you. I think it's 10 or 10 past 20 in the morning, or 20 past 10 in the morning. So today, really, so the topic of today's talk is language spoken and unspoken, and discourse analysis, manufactured consent in political and religious narratives. I will stress, during this, presentation, the unspoken, because usually goes unnoticed, and one of the tools that I will explain later on, some of the advice I will give to aspiring discourse analysts is actually to look for the unspoken, or the lays behind the discourse. So today, really, I will invite you into a journey, not just through the study of language, but through the complex landscape where meaning, power, and society intersect. We'll look at how the ways we speak, the silences we keep, and even the words we choose not to use shape our lives, our politics, and communities. We'll see that language is more than words. This is something I will stress in this particular talk. It's the scaffolding of our reality, the hidden architecture of our institutions, our identities, and our consent. So let's begin. So what I'm going to try to cover in this 45 minutes talk, or an hour hopefully, is to maybe go through the basics. What is discourse? We hear the word discourse by politicians, and it's kind of thrown around in our environment. We don't really mean. What do we mean by discourse? Okay. So what does the study of language discourse matter? This is critically important, especially when we look at some of the case studies we're going to cover today. We're going to talk philosophically a bit about the Derrida's notion of text, the architecture of knowledge, the intentionality model, and so on. So we are going to unpack foundation theories like Derrida, Saussure, Austin, Searle, and Foucault, Michel Foucault. We will break down how language doesn't just describe the world, but actually creates it. And that's really important, creates the world. Language creates the world, not just describes the world. Then we'll put these into ideas to work. So we have 3 case studies, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and I should put inverted commas in the word conflict, and I will explain later on why. Australia's voice referendum, and debates about Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. Finally, I will share some advice for aspiring discourse analysts, and a challenge for us all. So this is in sum, what I'm going to talk about. So hopefully this will generate some really interesting discussion later on. So let's have a look at Jacques Derrida's notion. French philosopher, believe it or not, he was born in Algeria in 1930. So nationality-wise, he was Algerian as well, Algerian French. So it's a good start to understand what the text means. So it has very interesting, remarkable assertion saying that il n'y a pas hors du texte. So it is a revolutionary in a way, because what actually meant by that, there is nothing outside the text. So there is nothing outside. What he meant text means language. There is nothing outside language. So he gets quoted a lot. You see you read his quotation, this particular citation everywhere, but it's quite misunderstood. So this is actually part of the problem of translation in a way, because I want to read Jacques Derrida's or Michel Foucault in French, and I see the translation is badly done. So it's always better to, if you can access the primary source, would be really good, whether it's in Arabic or French or any other language. You always get a better feel of what the author is trying to say. So that's something you maybe should consider when you're accessing resources. So hacking back to, or going back to what he wants to say about there is nothing outside the text. What Derrida is trying to say, he didn't say that the real world does not exist. That's what really, he doesn't mean that. He's making a more radical claim that everything we know, repeat, everything we know, every experience is always filtered through language and culture. So everything we know, everything we construct goes through language. So there is no pure, in a way, unmediated access to reality. No way to step outside the web of words, symbols, and contexts. Say, for example, if you think of a word called, or two words, olive tree, for example, okay, olive tree. So there is an arbitrary, in linguistics, we learned that there is an arbitrary relationship between the symbol and the form of the tree. So even with how we picture it, its meaning, symbolism depends on culture, memory, context. For example, for the Palestinians, the tree, resembles resistance. And even the PLO, Yasser Arafat, I don't know whether you remember when he addressed the United General Assembly, you know what he said, I quote him, saying that today I have come bearing an olive branch and the freedom fighter's gun. Don't let the olive branch fall from my hand. I repeat, don't let the olive branch fall from my hand. That's end of a quotation. So the olive tree is more than symbolizing peace in this particular context. It is part and parcel of the Palestinian cultural memory. Even in the Palestinian keffiyeh, the Palestinians wear, it contains an olive leaf. So the words symbolize or have different symbolism depending on the culture and the context. So when Derrida says there is nothing outside the text, he's reminding us of a few things. First of all, meaning is never fixed or absolute. Everything is filtered through language, and interpretation is always involved. We are always inside the text. Literally, we are inside the text, and that means meaning is always up for negotiation. So the meaning is always up for negotiation. That's a very important point that we have to make. This matters because if meaning is never absolute, then power can shape what meanings stick and which are dismissed. Okay, so that's very kind of important introduction about the theoretical aspect of Derrida's notion of text. So let's have a look at delve further into the architecture of language. So we can build on what Jacques Derrida is saying with Fernand de Saussure, concept of langue. Again, go back to French again, langue and parole. So langue and parole. So the langue is the abstract system of language shared by community, the underlying structure that makes communication possible. Whereas parole, individual acts of speaking, how language manifests in specific instances of communication. So if you think of architecture, you think of a building. In a building, or even the chair you're sitting on at the moment, do you see the screws? No, you don't. So the hidden screws of the chair, or the one you're sitting on at the moment, is kind of the elements that you don't see, the elements that the important elements you see, and that makes the structure works. So long is the kind of the blueprint, the screws, the blueprint, the grammar, the syntax, and agreed meanings or semantics. Whereas the parole is how we actually use it, all the messy, kind of creative, personal ways people speak. So the question is, who designs the blueprints? Who designs the blueprints? Who sets the rules? And that's not actually neutral. It's about power, tradition, and history. So when we look at language, we don't look at it just as just words. We look at it as power, tradition, and history. And to be a true, as I will explain later on the last slide, to be a true discourse analyst, you have to know about history. You have to know about philosophy. You have to be a good reader. You have to read widely. Even poetry, sometimes a poet might give you different ideas. Mahmoud Darwish, when he says, I am ana lughati, I am language, so that's actually, even though the two words are, the said statement it's not complex linguistically, but it's very profound. So when he says ana lughati, means my language is everything. And that's what colonizers do. The first thing they do, the French did that in Tunisia. The first thing they attack is a language. They try to replace Arabic with language, because Arabic is the language of the Quran, ولغة القرآن. So if you attack language, you attack the culture. So language. This is kind of been in the last 20 years. This is kind of trying to play the devil's advocate. Is that always look at language when sociologists and politicians or political commentators forget about language. They overlook it and they think it's not important, but it is important. I mean, if it's not important, politicians won't have speech writers, right? So politicians have speech writers because they think it's important. The word they utter, plays a huge role. So when you control, it's all about control. So when you control language, you set the limits of what can be said. When you control parole, you play with the limits, with those limits, sometimes breaking them, sometimes reinforcing them. Institutions, schools, media, governments often police the rules of long, shaping the counts of proper speech, what's acceptable and what's beyond the pale. We even go further with Austin. He wrote a very immortal book in a way. It's called How to Do Things with Words. So he talks about the performative theory. The question that could ask is, what if language does not just describe the world, but does things in the world? Language does things in the world. So performing is making an action in words. So his theory, what's called performative utterances, shows that certain statements like making a promise, declaring a war, or pronouncing someone's married bring realities into being. So in technical terms, we talk about locutionary, illocutionary, and perlocutionary. So perlocutionary generally is the effect on the hearer. So when a judge says, for example, I hereby sentence you, or a religious leader says you are forgiven, it's not a description, it's an act. And that's very important to notice, that language is about acting. It's not just describing the world we live in. So that's why we have to take into consideration when a politician speaks, what does assertion he makes or she makes, brings things into our reality. So it's important. Like when they say something, they're not just a word they're saying it for nothing. They do it and they're actually performing an act. So you have to think. Think about how much of politics, law, and religions works this way. Words create realities, identities, obligations, and exclusions. This brings us also to the notion of intention. I mean, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so every word there is an intention behind it. So whose voice speaks? So when someone makes a claim, or a politician, or a media or journalist, whose voice, does he represent a particular voice? So Searle, for example, he gave another dimension to intention, which is about the cognitive. So the cognitive framework plays a huge role in determining the type of speech. So language emerges right here from intentional mental states, but whose intentions are truly being expressed in public discourse? So in other words, whose mask is that particular person is wearing? كما قال محمود درويش سقط القناع عن القناع. The mask has fallen from the mask. So we have to think. To me, if I see a politician speaks, I see a mask wearing. He's wearing a mask, or she's wearing a mask. What's behind that mask is that shows, that's what your role as a discourse analyst to discover. So you have to know about the history, you have to know about the intentions and so on. So there is a hidden, in a way, there is a hidden agency. So when politicians or religious leaders speak, multiple layers of institutional intentions may operate beneath apparent individual expression. So when a leader says, this is my opinion, it's not really his opinion. He's representing a body of philosophy or ideas and so on. Netanyahu, so he has so many things behind him, so he doesn't utter things from nothing. So it's really important to think about intention, So misunderstandings and manipulation often ride on these currents. Are we hearing the speaker's intention or someone else's agenda? So obviously there is, especially when you're talking about politics, there is an agenda going on. So this is specifically crucial in the religious or political discourse, where the voice that emerges often a chorus or amalgamation of interest, not a single mind. So when we talk about that brings us to something very crucial, which is language and power. So language as power, and even Foucault spoke about knowledge is power as well. It's not just language, knowledge is power, is power as well. So language becomes a tool for establishing and maintaining authority, creating hierarchies of meaning that determine which voices are heard and which interpretations are accepted as truth. Okay, consider difference, for example, just to give you some ideas. Freedom fighter. Okay, so freedom fighter and terrorist. You hear these words all the time, and we hear more, particularly with Islam, always hear like terrorist. We don't hear about freedom fighter, right? And same person is the same person, right? But different label. So the consequences could be legal, moral, even life and death are immense. So, Nelson Mandela was a terrorist before, right? After that, he became a hero. He became a freedom fighter. Geronimo in America, chieftain, Indian chieftain, who was a terrorist in the US. He was named the freedom fighter. So it depends who actually narrates. That's why I truly believe, I even discussed that in the book I published last year, that as Muslim nation, we have to rewrite our history. We have to go back to our cultural memory. We have to set the rules. Don't let other people dictate what our history is and what our history is not. So, particularly, George Orwell said, if you control the past, you control the present. If you control the past, you control and if you control the past, you control the future as well. So in other words, if you control the past, you control the present and the future. So it's really important. History is crucial. Particularly if you want to be a good discourse analyst, you have to study history and philosophy. So it's really important tools, not just the linguistics element. So when we say about language and power, I want to stress that discourse analysis at its core is about tracing these flows of power. Who gets to define the terms, whose stories are amplified, and whose are silenced. And we're going to see later on in the case studies that Islamophobia, for example, in Australian context, it's like a matter of the politician considered as something personal, whereas anti-Semitism is amplified. They say, oh, anti-Semitism, we have to do something about it, So it's all about perspectives. And so their attitude towards Islamophobia and towards the difference or the biased approach towards Islamophobia and anti-Semitism in Australian, and actually in my recent paper, I saw that pattern globally. Their attitude towards Islamophobia is quite different to anti-Semitism. So that's kind of brings me to the 3 case studies, and I will tell you why. You're probably wondering why we have 3 kind of pretty different, but nevertheless, I'll explain to you the linking part. So the first one is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So analyzing how, for example, when we say conflict, which is, I'm going to show you a paper I published last year, conflict in inverted commas itself is shapes understanding, obscuring questions of occupation. So when we say conflict or war, I mean, if you look at the media today, our politicians they speak about war. It's not a war. It's an aggression. It's a genocidal mission in Gaza. Why can't you just name the language with the right words? It's not a conflict. It's not happening since October 7, 2023. It's been happening in the same genocidal mission happening for the last 78 years. So it's not about framing. Really, it's really important to how the situation is being framed. So the framing plays an important role, and you have to be careful about words. And on LinkedIn all the time, I try to kind of pick, journalists saying, conflict. I said it's not a conflict, or they say, oh, it's a war. It's not. I'm sorry, you have to change the word. It's not a war. It's a genocidal mission. The second case study is the Australia's voice referendum. Examining how framing around recognition versus sovereignty influence public discourse and voting patterns. So you probably think why I'm dealing with the voice referendum. I mean, there's nothing to do with Islam or the Arab world, But it's, as a Muslim scholar, you have to be concerned about kind of misrepresentation of the Aborigines in Australia. So if you see aggression, if you see anywhere in the world, as a Muslim scholar, it's your responsibility to respond to it. It's not nothing. I mean, this is actually misconception, for example, about the word jihad. The Islamic concept of jihad. They think that jihad is only to do with Islamic land. It's not. It's not. If he sees in the Prophet Muhammad, what did he say? He said, if you see something bad, what do you do? Try to change with your hand. If you can't do it, you do it with your heart. With your, you have the intention of changing it. So the Australian voice referendum, I will explain to you what actually meant and so on, to just to show that I'm interested in it, because I want the equal rights between the white people, the white Australians, with the Aboriginals, with the real inhabitants of Australia. The third case is the Islamophobia versus anti-Semitism debates. And as I said, based on the study, I completely can't really argue with numbers, because I'll show you some numbers. There is a biased approach. The way the politicians or the media, Australian media, approach Islamophobia is quite different to anti-Semitism. I'm going to explain, that particular bias in my book last year, when I said, listen, Islamophobia is actually inherently a problematic word, because phobia is not, when you fear Islam, it's not irrational. It's actually rational, because it's premeditated. There is a whole system behind this fear of Islam. So it's not a phobia like irrational, like you are, fearing of heights or anything like that. So it's actually premeditated, and we have to be careful. I think that the word Islamophobia, I argued in the book last year that we should be replacing with anti-Islam. It's simple as that, So it's not like it's just Islam. It's not a phobia as such. So really, it's the way the Muslims in Australia has been discriminated against. Treated differently when Jews have been discriminated against. I mean, I'm totally against anti-Semitism and against Islamophobia, but you have to be unbiased when you try to treat them. So if you unfortunately, situation is not like that in Australia. So they treat anti-Semitism as something urgent, and I will explain. I'll give you some ideas, some examples from politician speech, how they deal with this particular concept. So this article I published last year is called "Irony and Hyperrealism in Media Discourses: Examining the Israeli-Palestinian Conflict." And I put conflict in inverted commas because it's not a conflict; it's a war. It's a war on Gaza. It's a genocidal war on Gaza. So you have to use. I explained it. I mean, I argued in the article that we have to use the right words. We can't just pretend it's actually a conflict. It's not. It is not a conflict. So the word itself really flattens. If for example, supposedly I use the word conflict, okay, in it without inverted commas, because I need to explain in the article why I chose to put it in inverted commas, because really it flattens a long, painful history into two sides. There's just suggesting symmetry. It's just like a symmetry, like between the Israeli force and the Palestinians. And the Palestinians are like they don't have any arms to fight the aggression. But is there recognition or suffering? There is no recognition of suffering of the Palestinians. Last year, in my book last year, Muslim Perspectives on Islamophobia, I described the Palestinians as the M people, okay, M people, and it's like it's not really in English language. We don't have a word called M people, but actually, kind of was used by George Orwell in the past in 1984, his book 1984, to describe someone who does not exist. So an person is the kind of singular form of M people, is someone does not exist. You may wonder why am I writing about irony and hyperrealism? So what does hyperrealism? I mean, what I argued in the article, saying that what's happening in Palestine is beyond realism, beyond because hyperrealism is beyond reality. So we entered really a way called surrealism. It's what's happening in Gaza is surreal. Like we have to use those words. It's not hyperrealism; it's beyond that. And hyperrealism was coined by it's not my word. It's coined by Jean Baudrillard, because when he said that the mass media being everywhere, I quote him, has created a new reality and unprecedented new experiences. Then in 1990s, especially in the Gulf War 1991, he used that particular term to describe the wars happening between or the invasion of Iraq. But today, I don't think we should speak about hyperrealism. We should speak about surrealism, because what's happening in Gaza is beyond reality. And I'll tell you why we do that. Because I'll give you some examples of surreal Gaza. Okay. In this particular article, I analyzed the speech by Bassem Youssef. He's a comedian, Egyptian comedian living in America. And he said that what's happening in Gaza really is Halloween. The West celebrates Halloween all the time. He said, so when Gazan men, imagine, it's just unbelievable, actually. Gazan men picking up body bits of their blown up kids and they put them in a plastic bag. Imagine you as a father, pick up the bits of your children and you put them in a plastic bag. I mean, that's not hyperrealism, that's surrealism. Blown up babies, no, really, I've seen that actually, images. Blown up babies and children are stuck in buildings like shredded dolls. Children writing their wills. Where do you find that in the world? Children write their wills. When I die, I want to give this to my brothers or sister, whatever, the complete destruction of Gaza, hospitals, universities, and schools. I mean, is that hyperrealism? It's not hyperrealism. It's surrealism. That's what I argued in the paper. So and also, if you, I really encourage you to read a book by he's a Jew, actually, Australian Jew. He lives in Melbourne, actually, by Lowenstein. It's called The Palestine Laboratory. He wrote a book called La Palestine Laboratory, because Gaza it became a playground, really, to test the arms of the Palestinians. It's like testing laboratory for Israel. So imagine using a land. It doesn't matter where who lives in that particular land. Use it as a laboratory to test your arms. It's beyond. It's beyond reality. It's beyond hyperrealism. So what three arguments I put in that particular paper. I really encourage you to read it. First of all, I stress the importance of language It's really important. Stressing the importance of language and understanding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and how language is used to manufacture consent and score ideological goals. So manufacture consent. So using the language, so we're going to give you examples in a minute about dehumanization of the Palestinians. What's the purpose of that? To manufacture consent. Because when you hear that, then you become used to that particular language, you know. If Netanyahu says, describing the Palestinian children as the children of darkness, if you keep hearing that all the time, then killing the children becomes normal. Like you normalize murder, you know. The second one argued that the use of irony. So irony is interesting because we are surrounded by irony. And if you want to know what irony is, it's a lack of fit between what is said and what is real. So argued that the use of irony surpasses the classic pragmatic interpretation, and it is rooted in cognitive processes. So when you use irony, is not just words you utter. It's actually cognitively constructive. So discourses. So sorry, I have to put that on. So discourses are never innocent. I stress that discourses are never innocent. Third, more importantly, the war on Gaza crystallizes or illustrates the notion of what we are living in a hyperrealism. So beyond hyperrealism is surrealism. So I'll give you some more examples. So these are the ones I kind of argued and I just mentioned earlier. So this just to give you some examples here in the, like for example, Associated Press. Okay, so when you talk about invasion of Ukraine, it's illegal. Putin illegally annexes. So illegally annexes. Whereas what happens to Israel applies to that doesn't apply to Israel. So Israel announces new settlement. So new settlement is kind of green. It's okay. It's not, we can accept that. But if you put illegally annexes, then it's not accepted. So you have to watch how the media and the politicians frame the narrative. So it's really important. I mean, this is just one example among many. Like there are thousands daily. I go mad when that's why sometimes I stop reading the papers because I go crazy because seeing this is not this is language. You're playing with language here, and that brings me to what George Orwell said. He said political language is designed to make lies sound truthful. Listen, is designed to make lies sound truthful and murder respectful. So if you murder innocent children, it's okay, no problems, we can accept that. So you manufacture the consent of people and to give an appearance of solidity to pure wind. So what some people, some politicians say things, it's in reality it's nothing. Like it's just like pure wind. Okay, so they give you all these promises, and in reality it's not there. And I call them weasel words. Weasel is a ferret or animal that actually sucks the egg and leaves the shell. So in other words, like words without, it's just shells. So they're not, it's bereft of their true meanings. So this is just an example. I mean, there are millions of examples of how the media manipulates the truth. Okay, so I'll give you more examples here of the double speak or double langage in French. So, for example, when it applies to Israelis, we call atrocities. When it applies to Palestinians, it's suffering. Slaughter, death. Okay. So it should be it should be the other way. So death is for Palestinians and slaughter is for that's right. Israeli slaughter and death is for the Palestinians. Have been killed, have been died, massacred, killed, soldiers, militants. So Hamas, for example, they treat them as militants, but they're not treated as soldiers. So it's the way, the different perspectives. Victims, collateral damage. We hear that particular word especially in the Gulf War and the invasion of Iraq. Whatever, you throw bombs on innocent people. The innocent people die and they're collateral damage. They're not victims. So did this day, routine death, children, minors, hostages, detainees, citizens, and human shields. And this kind of the argument. Netanyahu saying that Hamas is hiding behind the human shield, so using the civilians as human shield, which is like not true. We know it's not true, and the world is waking up to that reality. So that's it's the double. You have to really be careful of the double language or double language. Okay, so we better be faster because the time is running out. Obviously, the dehumanization of the Palestinians, they're using metaphors, they're using animal metaphors, as Netanyahu was saying, children of darkness, referring to children. I mean, how can you refer to children, innocent children, to children of darkness? I mean, you must be evil to say things like that, even like they can go to this particular guy, Amichai Eliyahu, he said they can go to island or desert, the monsters of Gaza. So referring to the Palestinians as the monsters of Gaza should find a solution by themselves. So there is behind that they historicize the Palestinians, so people without history. This is the problem. This is that they've been trying to this propaganda that the Palestinians without history, like the terra nullius, the Palestine is a place where just the Jews came, a land without people. That's what they said. It's a land without people, which is not true. So the purpose of that, the purpose of dehumanizing the Palestinians is to language legitimizes violence through the common and widely colonial discourses of civilizing savages. And the French, we suffered from that. French, like mission civilisatrice, so civilizing the savages. The reason the French went to Tunisia and Algeria is to civilizing us. Civilizing us. So as if they brought this civilization, and the Gulf War. What George Bush said. Said we're here to win the hearts and minds of the Iraqi people. I mean, by bombing them. This is irony. Also the Israel using the what you call the mowing the grass. They say periodically, periodic attacks on Gaza, mowing the grass. It's like they're not humans. Just grass. So you have to be. We have to, as organic intellectuals, we have to oppose this particular language. And this has been my aim throughout my research, is that I see that it's my responsibility as a linguist to expose the lies of the government. And this is actually, it's not even my saying. Noam Chomsky in 1967, after the Vietnam War, he said that. He said that the role of intellectual is to expose the lies of the government. And you can't just be, have you're teaching Arabic or whatever language you do, and then you go home and that's it. No, it's your role is beyond that. I think is to expose, particularly when you see evil, in practice, especially with our brothers and sisters in Palestine, with what's happening to them. Okay, so the second case is the voice referendum. As I said earlier. The reason why I chose this particular theme, it's actually based on a paper I just sent for publication, is that discrimination, we have to oppose discrimination everywhere, not just to do with Arab lands or Muslim lands or the Muslim people. So if you see discrimination happening to Aborigines, which is the indigenous people of Australia, then you do something about it. You have tried to expose what they're saying. So what is the voice referendum? So basically, what happened? It happened in 2023. It's called the Indigenous Voice Referendum. So asking Australians to amend the constitution. So the aim of that is to amend the constitutions to create a representative body of Aborigines and Torres Strait Islands people to put their input to see, okay, we exist here, we have some laws we need to change and so on. Unfortunately, they didn't go through. So the vote was 60% against it and 40% in favor. So the constitution wasn't successful at all. And there are so many reasons behind that. One of them is the still persistent white Australia policy, I think. The Australians or the whiteness still dominates the Australian society, unfortunately. Even though today we stand every time when we have a meeting in Australia, is that we have to acknowledge the indigenous people of Australia. Only by words. In reality, when the Aborigines tried to change the referendum, they were not successful, unfortunately. I could go on for. Do I have enough time? I'd probably like to go to other sections, Zainur.
I think you are still given for 10 more minutes.
10 more minutes.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll go quickly then in the next few, because I really like to go to the last slide about the advice to discourse analysts, because some of you may want to be a discourse analyst, and I'd like to give you some advice about that. So just briefly, so what at the moment this particular study is based on the speeches of Anthony Albanese and the opposition leader Dutton. So when you look at the discursive strategies, the way they frame their discussion is, for example, they say my fellow Australians is just to create in-group and out-group dynamics. If they don't really mean it. For example, they say if they, for example, give attributes to the Aborigines, extraordinary courage and grace about the Aborigines, right? And reality is not happening. So they use this particular language to. It's like cohesive language. You think on the surface, it's very cohesive, very welcoming, very accepting, but in reality, it's not. Okay? In reality, when it comes to action, it's not there. So there is a lack of fit between what they say and what's happening in the on the ground. The same thing with the opposition leader. So say he gave vague promises, like that's why I called ambiguity. The language is really ambiguous. For example, they say a practical solution. What does it mean, practical solution? He said, we give practical solution. A better future. What better future means? Improve outcomes. Improve outcomes. What does it mean? Dismissive abstraction for ideology, grievance, activists, practical need, appropriate spending, real arrogance. So they use words. Just I called, as I said earlier, weasel words. Words bereft of real meaning. I'd like to go quickly to the Islamophobia, because that's one I think is very important one. So the Islamophobia versus anti-Semitism debate. So the main argument of this particular paper is that Islamophobia is treated as a problem affecting Muslims without history. Listen, without the history of the Crusades, when Australians politicians speak about Islamophobia, they don't want to even mention. They don't want to mention. Probably they don't even know that there were Crusades before. They don't talk about the American invasion of Iraq. They don't talk about the invasion in Afghanistan. Even the attitude towards Palestine is biased. So while anti-Semitism is really important, is strongly condemned. And the history of hatred to the Jews has been amplified. That's why they always go back to we call the contextualization. They contextualize by recontextualize what's happening in the past to the Jews, to the Holocaust. Okay, so they always bring in their speech the Holocaust. We're not talking about the Holocaust here. What's happening in Palestine. It's actually the Holocaust happening to the Palestinians. Actually, the irony of it all. So if you look at what I did to actually, you can't really play with numbers, and that's something I really encourage you to, if you're going to study on in discourse analysis, do quantitative study. So what I did, I studied 75 texts, right, and I looked at collocations, like putting words together. You know the word by the company it keeps. Euphemism, metaphor, and I stress the word act discourse historical analysis, because go back to the Holocaust and the Crusades. So I have to go back to the history of this conflict. I think that's kind of basically what I covered, but I'm happy to talk about that more. But I like to go, since we don't have much time. So please, pay attention to the quantitative, because very important, because you can't argue with numbers. Okay, if I said to you, there are 55 texts, they were biased towards Islamophobia or towards Islam, then no one can argue with that, can they? Not just descriptive. Okay, just quickly, I go to the key findings about the three kind of case studies. Is that discourse isn't just about words. Okay, it's about power, policy, and who gets to belong. Okay, the framing of social issues isn't neutral, so it's really important. Isn't neutral. It creates realities, shapes consent, and can sustain or challenge injustice. So the third one is very important. Those who control the narrative can manipulate not just consent, but also division and exclusion. So the third point is really important. Okay, so my advice to aspiring, discourse analysts is that please, no shortcuts. Have thorough understanding of previous work and theories on the topic. So really, and you have to read widely, and you have to understand the history and the philosophy behind every particular utterance. Know your linguistic tools is really important. Discursive, what you call fancy word is called discursive repertoires, and use like tools like NVivo is a fantastic tool to learn, because it gives you a quantitative analysis. And also you have to understand the social, political, and philosophical nature of the text, and be inquisitive. Very important. Be inquisitive and eclectic. Combine history, anthropology, philosophy, psychology, sociology, and political science. Ulama al-Madi, the scholars of the past, they were huge vessels. They know everything. They could be scholar in about 5 or 6 disciplines. To me, I don't believe in separate disciplines. I believe you have to be good in all disciplines. So that's my best advice, because you become richer. Okay, you become richer that way, and your points of view become more acceptable in a way. Okay, and also try to collect your own data, field work if you can, if it can be done in a way. And please don't rely on secondary sources. Don't rely on people's interpreting Arabic text. Alhamdulillah, you're learning Arabic here at in Indonesia. So go to the sources. The book I published last year, most of the resources were in Arabic, and that's because you have to give a different perspective. It's all about perspectives. Okay, and very importantly, be an organic intellectual. Love of the truth. Avoid being a parrot regurgitating what other people say. Be yourself. Be firm, have a ground, be grounded, and also be principled. Like if you have a principle, doesn't matter what other people say about you. So also be convinced about what your contribution is, regardless the consequences. أظن أني أكملت. terima kasih. شكرا لكم.
Mashkuron, shukran jazilan. Thank you very much, Dr. Zohair Gabsi.
Okay.
Now we come to the Q&A session. So those who would like to directly ask questions, you can use the symbol of raising hand, or you can simply write your question in the chat box. Then I will come and see it. Yes, time is for the question and answer. Any question? Audience, please just simply raise your hand. Okay.
Okay, Vita.
Kavita Peterson, probably your student in Australia.
Yeah, she's...
Okay.
Yes, that's right. Thank you so much for the talk today. I'm really excited to be here and listen to everyone's contributions. I just had a question, and maybe this was only not covered because of the time constraints, but I'm aware that we're currently in a kind of landscape where sometimes, even if we analyze, how language is being used and we have results and we present those results, it doesn't necessarily get received, you know, like it doesn't have an impact just to say this is a phenomenon that is happening. So I was wondering if you have any advice or thoughts on how do we actually translate our analysis into impact?
Okay, that's thank you very much, Kavita. That's an excellent question. I think as an academic, I think we should really go down from our ivory tower. That's why I write quite extensively and public, opinion pieces. And I think to change the perception, you have to speak to the public. You can't, unfortunately, when you're writing an academic paper, generally academics read the paper. But if you write to the public, I think probably you have more, that will probably have more exposure and probably have more influence. I think the impact is very important. I mean, I've been like the last time when I wrote that article on hyperrealism, I got contacted by the Labour Party in Australia, actually. And they said to me, would you like to be part of the Friends of Palestine movement? And only because I wrote that article. I mean, that shows that there is impact. And since then, I've been having this conversation with the Australian Labour Party, even though I really don't believe in Australia, neither Australia. The parties are all, to me, they're all corrupt anyway. But at least it's better than nothing. You know, if you listen, you can't blame. We have a saying in Arabic, you can't blame, darkness, light a candle, because even a little thing might inspire others to write. And that's why I mentioned at the end of the talk is that aspiring, linguists and discourse analysts, they need to get out of the comfort zone in a way and face the reality. I mean, I wrote about Palestine, and even though I don't care about the consequences, losing my job or anything like that, I really don't, because that's your principle, and you can't see injustice and you're quiet about it. Thank you, Kavita.
Okay, thank you for the question, Kavita. So there is another question from. This is from Dr. Agun Degaf. Yeah. Okay. He is questioning about the multi-layers of meaning and multifaceted nature of the discourse. So, what would you recommend for us as the researchers? Which aspect of the discourse that could help us as researchers to strongly reveal the hidden messages?
Yeah. There are so many. Listen, as I mentioned earlier, there are so many discourse strategies you can investigate. It depends on your purpose. You see, the purpose determines what tools you're going to use. Whether you're going to, for example, whether you're going to talk about, for example, metaphors. You could practically write a paper on just metaphors, and it's better actually to be. I noticed with if you are interested in publishing, especially aspiring to be a publisher in linguistics or discourse analysis, try to concentrate on one particular element, because generally the journals on discourse analysis journal, they prefer that you analyze one particular aspect instead of broadly. But there are so many ways you can obviously, as I mentioned, you have to emphasize or study the unspoken, the missed, the missed narratives, and the missed narratives generally they're the important ones. And you see that, you find that from reading about history. You can't be a true or a great discourse analysis without knowing the history and philosophy of that particular text. So it's really, that's why I kind of emphasize in this speech that the unspoken is as important as the spoken, and that's what you come in as a true discourse analyst. Yeah.
Thank you for answering, and thank you for the question. We are still open to welcome and invite for the participants to pose or to ask his or her question to the speaker. So today we are really honored to have such, insightful discussion and presentation from Dr. Zohir Gapsi with regard to, and also especially while presenting the case studies, three different case studies, which are really interesting. Once again, we would like to invite the participants to, okay, Haikal, we receive raising hand from Haikal. Haikal, please go ahead with your question.
Okay, thank you for the time. I would like to ask you about, I don't know if you know the situation in Indonesia like lately, but there is some kind of situation that there is a discourse, there has been an attack on a Muslim group that are combining Islamic faith and some Muslim groups, and most of the peoples and the social media are I don't know, but really supports the condemnation. Seeing that those who control social media, those who are in power, in discourse, and I want to ask you on how do you understand or explain that the effect of echo chamber that people who are have different beliefs, such as they are in like Islamophobia and anti-Semitisms, and they cannot really make a common ground between each other, and they have to like create they understand each other's, and they cannot do that because of the echo chamber of the social media. And I would like to ask you as the uh more question more question from Kavita Peterson's questions. How do you implement, or how do you understand people outside of on the social media to understand it, that people are really gonna believe what they believe in? If you are gonna tell them that, oh, this is not right, or this this framing of media is not right for the people itself. That's all.
It's interesting what you're saying. Social media, I'm not totally engaged with social media, to be honest with you. Apart from LinkedIn and other sources, but like TikTok and things like that, I'm not generally involved in that. I think I mean, social media plays a huge role in the way called the manufacturing content, right? And we have to be, as discourse analysis, we have to be aware that platform exists, and we cannot ignore it, definitely. Usually, I think I'm not sure whether you want. The question is whether you should. I mean, the question whether we should really engage with that or not. Is that what we should engage with social media or not? On a personal level, I really don't. Apart from LinkedIn, even LinkedIn, I am generally quite careful with whom I'm interacting, and because otherwise we'll go, overboard, and they may not understand your point of view. I think if you want to change, situation anywhere, it has to start from grassroots, grassroots problem, So, for example, I give the examples of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia in the surrounding context. I mean, to change the attitude, of the biased attitude, we have to expose that we have to expose that bias by speaking about it, by criticizing. For example, in the particular case in Australia, the both, I don't know whether you knew that Australia has employed two special envoys, one for anti-Semitism and one for Islamophobia. And when the anti-Semitism came about, the report, I read it carefully, and I wrote a piece, against it, saying this is the kind of it's not anti-Semitism. It's a claim on freedom of speech. And the same thing, I criticized the Islamophobia info as well. His report is apologetic report. He didn't give really practical solution to the Muslims today. So I think it's better to engage not so much with social media, but with at the grassroots problem, at the maybe media outlets more, because the media really influence more than the social media. Maybe the youth, maybe I think it engage more with youth. But if you want to really change the perspective and narratives, you have to start at the kind of academic, or maybe on the public level instead of the social media. Really, social media to me is not. I don't think. I think plays a role in the Israeli-Palestinian, conflict, because I think it changed really the. That's why Israel was really worried about what's happening to them, because they lost really the moral ground they used to claim, and because social media plays a huge role, particularly among youth, but I think it's better, to me, as a academic, it's better if you work on the grass root level instead of just on the branches, because the branches won't do much. But if you, for example, criticize directly reports by special envoy and things like that, then people will take your view into consideration instead of just like a tweet or say things you say on social media. I don't think it has an impact.
Okay, thank you for the answer.
Okay, no worries.
Do we still have time, right? Okay, maybe for the last chance, if you still have one more question.
Yeah, we have plenty of time.
Okay.
I'm happy to hear.
Kavita is responding to Haikal's question. Wait, let me read this. She thinks that the conversation is great compromise between academic discourse and mainstream media. I wonder whether this is where we can have impact, which is then shared on social media. So she's commenting on
all right, okay.
The impact of social media in reproducing and maintaining the probably the bias and also the imbalances of the power. Yeah. Thank you for.
Thank you, Kavita. Yeah, Kavita, she's very active.
Okay, nice one to have you here.
Very active. Yeah, very active.
And
yeah.
Nice one. So, any other questions, or otherwise, Pagwin or any other participants? Okay, probably they got, satisfied with the explanation. Really insightful today, Dr. Zohair Gapsi. Yesuruna liqa'ukum. We are really pleased to have you with us today. And thank you also for Kavita for joining us. This is really quite international for you today. We have
Kavita from
Australia. From
Australia. Melbourne.
Deakin University.
From Deakin, yeah. She's tell us a bit. Kavita can introduce yourself. You can introduce yourself.
Oh, okay. Hello, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you. I'm sorry, my Bahasa Indonesia is a little bit rusty, so I'll talk in English.
No.
But I'm currently a PhD student at Deakin University who's looking at museum studies with a focus on decolonial museum practice. But before this, I was a practicing translator for over 15 years. So for me, discourse analysis and sociolinguistics, the relationship between society and culture and language is something which I've always had a very big interest in. So I was really excited to join today and hear everyone talk about these important issues. Thank you.
And Kavita is going to also give us a talk in the next episode of the International Scholar Engagement. especially on the topic of translation, I believe. Yeah.
Yes, so, look forward to it.
Okay. So
before I go, I like to maybe suggest something for the future. Is that we really in need of cultural research centers in the Muslim world. We need that because at the moment, most of research we do is all on Islamic studies and things like that, but we don't have really research centers, for example, on Hebrew or on Israel. I mean, if Moshe Dayan Center, one of the biggest research centers in Israel, like they study anything and everything comes from the Arab and the Muslim world, whereas we don't. And this is actually a problem. I remember a few years ago, I published an article on the Berber language in Tunisia, and here we go. I got an email from the editor saying that you have to change few sentences in your article. Said, how can it be done? Because someone from Moshe Dayan Center said that this particular clause doesn't, it's not, they didn't like it. So I said, listen, I wrote it, so I'm not going to change that. Now it's a bit too late. Just to show you, it's unbelievable. Some centers, like the Moshe Dayan Center in Israel, they study and they read anything come from the Arab and Muslim world, whereas we don't. And this is a problem. I think we should really re-engage and rethink about how to create research centers with Muslim scholars and non-Muslim scholars to engage with what's happening in the real world. And what's happening in the Palestine is a result of us not doing the right thing. This is kind of
that's a great idea to also counter the kind of the ideas and big discourse.
It's all about discourse. It's all about narratives. Who writes the narratives? So if we let everyone else write the narratives or the history or our history, I mean, we don't have a say in it. I mean, in the past we used to be like the makers of history, and now we became a subject in history. People study Muslims, and before we used to lead. All fields of knowledge, everything, every field of knowledge. We used to be the leaders. Unfortunately, we need to go back to that, inshallah. But we have to work hard towards that.
It is, we can entertain our past that has been outstanding, but in the near future we will become and achieve that position again.
Inshallah.
So, with the presence of the scholars like Dr. Zohir Ghabsi and probably other Islamic scholars and probably discourse analysis enthusiasts, probably they can also create a better world for us all.
Inshallah. Ya Rabb. كلنا مع بعض. Everyone together.
Okay.
One hand cannot clap. One hand cannot clap. Two hands.
It is. Yeah.
Last thing, I'd like to thank Agwin, because Agwin was who's actually invited me to talk today. So I really thank you, Agwin. Shukran laka. Yeah, thank you, Agwin.
Mashkuran.
Yeah, Dr. Zohir. You're welcome. You're most welcome.
Thank you, Agwin. Thank you.
Hope someday you can visit UIN Malang.
Inshallah, anytime. I'm available anytime. I love to visit you guys. I really do. Yeah. Okay. Maybe we can establish a research center, so inshallah.
Inshallah, yeah. Thank you everyone for joining us, and also this is once again we would like to express our gratitude, especially for the speaker, Dr. Zohir Ghabsi, for his insight and also ideas and really thought-provoking materials presented today in this occasion. And also we'd like to thank our international participant, Kavita, and also all participants joining our session today. On behalf of the Faculty of Humanities, and on behalf of the Dean, we would like to thank you very much. Thank you for Shukran Kathiran.
Thank you. See ya. Thank you, Dr. Faisal. Thank you very much.
Thank you.